House sharing at midlife, or in my case, over 50, comes with a lot of challenges that nobody really talks about. And in this video, I'm sharing why I had to leave that first house share and how I came to be living where I am now. When I shared my previous video on house sharing at over 50, I never realized how many of us are going through the same situation, starting over at midlife, house sharing with other people, and just generally trying to stay afloat emotionally and financially. If you're new here, my name is Shirley, and on this channel I share the realities of living solo at midlife, or in my case over 50, and I have to keep saying over 50 because a few people have reminded me that unless I plan to be living until I'm 116, 58 is no longer midlife. Before I continue about the story of how I got to leave my first house share and how I got to be where I'm staying now, I just want to clarify a few things, and that is that before I moved into that house share, I was in a really difficult relationship. I had been with a covert narcissist for around 6 or 7 years. And towards the end of January, he said to me, I want you out of here by the end of February. By chance, the friend was moving into the area because she'd just got a new job. And there was a place that she was looking at which had an extra room. And she said to me, do you want me to ask about it to see if it's still free? And I said, yes, please, let me know how much it is, blah, blah, blah. So that's how we ended up living in the same house share. She got the bigger room, I had the smallest room out of the three. The other one was a studio, which at the time that we moved in, someone was already renting. So I got the smaller room and we moved in on the same day. She paid for her rent and I paid for mine. At no point at all did she pay any of my bills, buy any of my food, and we just moved in to the same house share together. And neither of us knew the landlady before then. And to be honest, we didn't meet the landlady until about a week later after we moved in, namely because she lives abroad and she comes to the UK whenever she needs to. And that's when we met her. All the paperwork and everything else was done on WhatsApp, and the contracts were signed through email, or she sent them through email. We did the usual signature. So I paid the first month's rent and she agreed that I would pay the deposits in 6 months installments. And that's how I got to pay for the new accommodation. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because someone left a comment saying that I should be grateful to the friend because she let me move in with her. And that's why I'm just clearing it up, to put it mildly, to be honest, because that's the thing with being on this platform and sharing your experience, is that people make judgments. So to get back to the story of the house share and the challenges that comes with it. At the beginning, I did borrow pots, pans, probably spices and things like that from my friend, because it didn't even occur to me that I needed those things before I moved. I did have some money saved up and I did buy my food, but when it comes to utensils and things like that, it didn't even occur to me. So I did have to borrow some things from the friend. And to be fair, we did have a good time. We shared things, and even though I had very little, when I did get my money, I'd share the food with her. But eventually, once I got my job and I had more money, and I was buying my own pots and pans, I was able to buy my own spices and little pots and other things to keep my food to last longer. It was amazing because all of a sudden there was this new green-eyed monster that I never expected I'd had to face. The first person that had the studio had moved out, and so she moved to the studio, and I stayed in the smallest room because obviously that's all I could afford. So there were times when we would put a blanket on the floor, have crisps and picnics, and we'd make dinner and watch films and things like that. And something happened with the job that she had originally moved to that area for. So she was at home, or she wasn't working for part of the summer, and we used to sit outside and have a lunch, maybe share a bottle of wine, and just have a good time. And I really miss that. That's the saddest thing about this friendship, because she's got a car, and during the summer she'd say, "Oh, what are you doing? Shall we go out?" For example, there was a time when we went out to Kingston and we're just walking around, enjoying the summer, enjoying the scenes, enjoying just relaxing, being out. And she said, "Oh, I want a drink." And I said, "Okay." And I don't have any money. And I said, "Put it on my tab." And so we had a drink, a few snacks to go with it, and we had a good time. And every time we ever went out, I said, "Give me the receipt," and I had planned to pay her back whenever I got the money. By September of that year, I'd got myself a part-time job, which meant I had more money to play around with and to buy my own stuff. And it was at this point that the green-eyed monster came, and there was such a change. And I never realized that this persona or personality existed. And it just shocked me. So, because money had been tight through all the time, I was careful to budget every month. I knew what was going out in rent, and an extra £150 was being spent on paying off the monthly deposit just for the room. So I would have got my first payment from my work at the end of September. So that made things a lot easier. And I knew that by October, I could pay off what I owed her. And I told her that. She knew that from time. Once I told her I had a job, that's when this different persona came out. What made it worse was when I told her I was leaving, and that monster basically turned worse than I thought, and things changed. And because I was no longer dependent, it became worse. The snide remarks became worse, and she demanded her money back. But by that time, because I'd got a job, I had more money, I was able to stand on my own feet a bit more, and I'd gained my dignity and confidence. So I stood my ground, and I said to her, "I told you you'll get it back at the end of October." She called me the B word, and I called it back to her. So she stormed out of the kitchen, and that was the last time I ever saw her. And I can tell you now that I was shaking. I was shaking so much. And I really hate confrontations at the best time. That was the last time I ever saw her. She knew that I was leaving on the Saturday, and she made sure that she was out of the flat before my brother and my daughter came to pick me up and move me out. Even before I left that first house share, I'd already calculated how much I owed her from the receipts that she'd given me. And come October, I set up the payment so I could transfer the money. But when I put in her details, I got a red flag to say the name is incorrect. So I messaged her And that's when I noticed that her photo had come off her profile on WhatsApp. So, silly me, I didn't realise that she'd blocked me. That's how I know that she'd blocked me, because she never replied, and her photo from her profile on my WhatsApp or my contacts list had gone. It's only £80. It's not going to break the bank, and it's not as though I'm leaving the country, for goodness sake. And for me, that was just so petty. So let's get back to the issue with why I had to leave. I think the issue, and for me, I didn't really have much issue apart from people's cleanliness and having to clean the cooker after people. After the landlady's mother moved in and she started wanting the house as her rules. And we were there as paying tenants. It's like what someone commented in my previous video, that when you're living in a house share, and if the owner is still living there, they're expecting you to live according to their rules. And to a certain degree, yes. But for me, I'm quiet. I clean up after myself. I clean up after people. And I think her issue was, one, she wanted the bathroom door closed at all times, all times. Now, the bathroom has no window, and the extractive fan is so noisy, I could hear it from my part of the flat, and I'm sure the whole building can hear the extractor fan. It was that noisy. And the issue is that the bathroom opens up directly opposite the kitchen door, and there's only like your normal hallway in between. And I think she didn't want the bathroom air going into the kitchen. We can't have the extractor fan. We can't have the drying racks to dry our clothes in our room, because it would cause mold in the rooms. But they're happy enough for us to close the bathroom door and let my clothes or our clothes grow mold. And for me, I know what mold can do for your health. And when you've already got very little money to spare on buying new clothes, I just was not prepared to have my clothes stay there for days while they're growing mold on the premise of it's drying. So I wasn't leaving the bathroom door open totally. I was leaving it ajar just so there would be some airflow. And she didn't like that. And the other issue was, as time went on, there were family dynamics that was coming into the flat share. And because I was there pretty much 24/7, because I wasn't working, or even when I started working, I'm working from home because it was an online job. And I don't think she liked the fact that I was able to see these family dynamics that was being played out in my presence, basically. So I started my job at the beginning of September, and at the end of September I got paid, and I thought, phew, I can relax a bit more. And unfortunately, I can't remember whether it was the end of September or the beginning of October when I get an email from the landlady, and the email said, Shirley, this email hereby is your 1 month's notice to vacate the premises. And after the elation of getting my first payment, oh my God, the stress of having to look for a place was even more immense than before. As you can imagine, I was in a major panic. Oh, I can feel the stress now just thinking about it. So I was in a major panic. I contacted the job centre. or universal credit. And apart from, I'm really sorry you're going through those things, there wasn't anything that they could do. So I immediately started looking for other places that I could rent. And my biggest worry was receiving universal credits, because I know that a lot of landlords really don't like people on benefits because they don't, I don't know, to be honest, because for us, part of universal credit is that they pay your rent to a certain limit. So I was paying 80% of my benefits towards rent and deposit. That's why up until I started working and got my first pay, I had very little money for food. And so after I got that email, I started panicking, but I started looking for a place, and there were loads of places, but I really was conscious of being on benefits and not being accepted. And I knew that by the time I would have left, I would have paid off all the deposits anyway, so I would get that back as a deposit for the next place. So that I wasn't worried about, plus the fact that I was already working and getting paid. So that made things a lot easier in terms of money stress. I saw a few places online, and I had been speaking to someone, and she looked like her place looked really nice. I would have my own room at the top of the house. And if I remember rightly, I might also have had, or that place would have had, its own entry. And for me, it was ideal. It looked really great. However, when it was nearer the time, because I think she said the person who was there at the time still had to move out. Then she said, I've got loads of people who are interested. I did go and look at one place, and it was really lovely. It's like a little white cottage, and it had a little garden on the outside with nice flowers and things like that. But when I went inside, it was open plan. So you walk straight into the living room stroke kitchen. It only had one bathroom, and that was really quite small. And the room is probably a lot smaller than my room now. And there was a big sort of cupboard space towards the side of the bedroom. But the unfortunate thing was, because the current tenant had got his clothes drying in the room, it smelled really damp, and I really didn't like it. And what's worse was that even though I got on with a woman, I tend to feel people's energies. I'm not sure whether you are into energy work, or I'm not hardcore energy work, but I can feel people's energies. And we got on well, and we chatted well. We even chatted about supplements because I told her I'm a nutritionist. But there was just something about the vibe of the place and the vibe of the woman. And also, the guy who was renting at the time came in, and it just felt wrong. To backtrack a little bit, the previous night I'd spoken to my older brother, and I knew that my younger brother had a spare room. And I asked him whether he knew whether that room was being rented to anyone, and he said, no, I don't think so. And I'm not going into that story about why I didn't ask my younger brother, because it's not right. Some things we have to keep private. So by the time I got back to the train station where I was living at the time, after that first viewing, my brother rang me, and he said, you'll be you'll be glad to know that you can move in. And it really is an immense relief to hear that after the stresses of house sharing, the friend, the landlady's mother being told I had to leave, to um to finally be somewhere somewhere where I knew that I'd be a lot safer and a lot more settled. And like everything in life, there were a few glitches to begin with, and there were a few things that we needed to iron out. On the whole, I've felt and feel a lot more settled here, especially now since things have been ironed out. And I've been really happy where I am. And the unfortunate thing is, in a year's time, I think they're planning to move, and I would have to move out in January or the beginning of next year. So that is the story of how I got to be living where I am now. And although life has been a lot more settled, it's still that living within other people's rules and fitting in to their lifestyle, their timetable, their way of life. And that's just how it is. I'd rather be where I am now than where I was before. And I've still got that clock ticking where I have to move out next year. And that's the way things stand at the moment. And so the story continues. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if this story resonates with you or maybe it touched you in some way, please give it a like and a hype, because that tells YouTube to share it with other people who may be interested. And the realities of living solo, starting over at midlife, and house sharing. And also, if you'd like to support the channel, please watch some of the videos, because that's how us creators on YouTube earn our income or our revenue. Or if you would like to support in a different way, there is a Buy Me a Coffee link in the description down below. And thank you so much for supporting me and for your lovely comment and sharing your stories. I have read nearly every one of them. I'm really sorry if I haven't got to yours and that I haven't at this point replied to your comments, because there's so many, and I really appreciate all the support and comments and your generous kindness and supporting me in other ways. And I will get round to replying to the comment. And I did create a community post to apologize if I don't get round to you, because there's over 200 comments on that previous video now. And I'm sorry if I can't reply to everybody. And I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.